Hello, I just had a lesson with Year 11 GCSE Religion, Philosophy and Ethics students. They were asked to deliver presentations online and it worked particularly well, so I thought I would share that with you. First thing I did was last lesson I set the task on Google Classroom, of course, and I spent 5 minutes talking through the instructions of the presentations and how they would work. Each group was shared this PowerPoint. I talked this through with them. Essentially, they needed to prepare short presentations on Muslim ceremonies in 3 groups. You had a group looking at birth, one group looking at marriage, and one group looking at death. Talked to them very briefly about rites of passage and the significance of ceremonies to mark different stages in someone's life. But aside from that, didn't give them too much information. It was more of a kind of group exploration task. So I asked them to prepare a presentation that was no shorter than 3 minutes, no longer than 5 minutes. Put a lot of emphasis on working as a team. I'm going to show you how I checked in to make sure that all students were contributing on that in just a moment. Gave them some guidance. I'm not going to talk through all of this now, but talked a little bit about how they could either pre-record the presentation or they could use screen capture, or present now in Google Meets and talk through a little bit about what they found out for their task. Each group were given a folder. So birth ceremonies, group 1. If I go to that folder here, all I shared with them was some information from the textbook. So uploaded that on CamScanner, nice and easy to do, and they could use that to answer some questions. So each group had a short set of questions to answer, and I asked them to complete those questions before working on their presentation, and to make sure that their presentation answered and covered these key things that they need to know. Then each group created their own PowerPoint or own Google Slides, so they could work on that. And I also gave some feedback to them, not just looks fabulous, but gave some feedback to them in Google Hangouts and checked in with them when they needed to answer some questions. Okay. Then a good way to check to see who's contributing is having a look at the version history. So if I'm looking at this marriage group, I can go to File, down to Version History and see Version History, and I can check, a little bit slow, but I can check to see who's contributed. If they're working on this live, you can also see different groups, different people, working on different elements of the presentation. And you can give them some gentle nudges in Google Hangout or however you're communicating with them. Luckily, all groups were really good at contributing and then decided to deliver their presentations in different ways. So the first group, we went to our Google link. So if I go back to Google Classroom, I then gave them some time to work on this in a double lesson. So they're the first period 1 of double lesson. And then second period, they were presenting. So we went to Google Meet. At the moment, it's not live, obviously, but we went to Google Meet. Students joined the conversation and joined the chat. And through Google Meet, they're able to present. So I don't know if this will work for me if there's no one in there. Yeah, so if I click present, I'm now presenting my screen. So anybody who's available in that chat, of course, can see what I'm showing and see what I'm presenting. So I had 2 groups decided to present that way. Obviously, before they decided who's going to talk about which slide and collaborated over that in Google Hangouts. But it worked very, very well. So all groups were listening in and had their microphones off. I requested that they recorded some information down. And then following that, they should then be able to look back at each other's presentations after listening as well. And then finally, they are given a task where they have to answer some questions, answer each other's questions. If I just go back to your classroom, they can then go to a final task where they answer questions on each of the different groups. So after they've listened to presentations, they then go to this final document sheet. If, for example, they're in group 1, birth and infancy, obviously they don't need to answer those questions. Having listened to the other group's presentations on marriage and death and burial, they should then be able to work their way through these questions. I then encourage them to talk to each other so they can have a conversation with each other about this if they get stuck, and they can continue to talk through Google Hangouts. and they can go back and have a look at each other's group presentations. Group 3 decided to do it slightly differently. So Group 3 were looking at death and burial. Instead of doing it live, which I think could be a little bit daunting for some students, they decided to do a pre-recording like I'm doing at the moment, and they've just shared it in the folder. So what we're going to do is listen to this. Students write down notes and they can use it to answer the questions in the final task. It's very good. They've collaborated, they've shared the different slides. I'm not going to play it now, but they've talked through different slides and made sure that each person is contributing. What's really good about this one is that, of course, students can go back and use it for a revision task, or they can go back and find out more about it if they get stuck. They can also pause it and go back, which is also really very useful. Okay, that's from me. I hope it's useful. It was surprisingly successful having all of Year 11 contributing and doing group presentations, and certainly something that I'm going to try again with my other classes. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.